Hey guys, so I'm going to be teaching about hair. And hair, it provides insulation from the cold and it protects our body. And there's three different types of hair. There's lanugo, and that covers the body of the fetus by like the 5th or 6th month. And it's really fine and there's no pigment, so there's not really any color. And it's mostly shed before the baby's even born. And then the second kind is vellus hair. And this is just like the peach fuzz that you see a lot on children and women. And then the third type of hair is terminal hair. And that's like the hair on your scalp, your eyebrows, and your eyelashes. And the vellus hair is replaced by, like during puberty, by the terminal hair. And in boys, about 90% of the vellus hair on their arms and legs, face, chest, and back is replaced by the terminal hair. And then in women, about 35% of arm and leg hair is replaced by the terminal hair. And then the structure of the hair, so pilus is like a strand of hair, and it's made up of 3 parts. The first one is the medulla, and it's the center of the hair shaft, and it's made of 2 to 3 layers of cells surrounded by air spaces, and it's made of soft keratin. So that's the center of it, and I just moved it. I have a picture here. Let's see where it went. So here is the medulla. You can see it's just part of the hair, but it's the very center part of it. And then there's the cortex. And it's the bulk of the hair. And it's made of many layers just depending on how thick a person's hair is. And it's important for like strength and shape and color. And keratin is tougher and less pliable in this part of the hair. And it's made of hard keratin. And the shape of the hair shaft determines if the hair is like straight or curly. And so if your hair is straight, then you have a round shaft. And if your hair is wavy, you have an oval shaped shaft. And if you have curly hair, then you have a ribbon shaped shaft. And then the third part is the cuticle. And this is like the outer layer of the hair, and it's made of 1 layer of cells, and they overlap each other, which secures the hair into the follicle. And the pili that is above the surface of the skin, so like the part of the hair that's above the surface is the shaft, and the part that's below the surface is the roots. And they're basically identical in structure. And then here's the cortex. You can kind of see it there, just this part of the hair. And then the hair follicle is this part down here. And that's where the hair is attached to the skin. And so that's the function of it. And it extends down to the dermis of the skin. And it moves from the outside. We're moving from the outside to the center of the follicle. There's 3 layers. The first one is the dermal root sheath, which is the outermost layer, and it surrounds the follicle. And then the second one is the external epithelial root sheath. And this is just kind of part of the epidermis, and it follows the follicle down into the dermis. And then the third layer is the internal epithelial root sheath. And this is the innermost layer, and it's thin, and it has overlapping cells that secure the hair to the follicle. So it's kind of like the cuticle. And then, so the hair bulb, which is, you can see it says hair bulb, it's just that little part right there. And that is the deepest part of the follicle. It's the deepest part, and it's inside the hair bulb is the hair matrix. And that is a structure made of keratinocytes that partially surround the cluster of dermal fibroblasts, and those are called hair papilla. And inside the hair papilla are the capillaries that nourish the cell. So that's where the cell gets their nourishment, is from the hair papilla, because there's capillaries in there. And the hair growth is in the matrix, and so the new cells push up old cells, and that's what causes your hair to grow. And then we have the arrector pili, which is a smooth muscle right there. and that connects to the bottom of the follicle or the base of the follicle. And when this muscle contracts, it's triggered by like cold temperatures and sympathetic activity. And so when they contract, the hair follicle is pulled up and the follicle is pushing up out of the skin, and that's where we get our goosebumps from. And there's two reasons why this happens. The first one is when it gets cold and it increases the height of the hair, which increases our insulation. So it's like trying to protect us. And then the second reason is during fight or flight situations. So during like sympathetic activity, it makes animals, I guess, look larger for intimidation, but I don't really know how much that helps us as humans. And then the hair growth. So the growth that happens in the follicle is divided into two phases, actually. So there's the growth phase, or it's called anagen, and then the resting phase. And during the growth phase, this is just when the hair is actively growing, and the duration, it varies, but it can go from 2 to 10 years for the scalp, but for the eyelashes, it could be like 30 days, but it varies. And then once the hair stops growing, it enters the resting phase. And the resting phase can go, like the scalp can grow from 4 to 5 months, and the eyelashes can grow like for 3 months. It just kind of depends. And then at the end of the resting phase, a new growth phase begins, and the old hair shaft is pushed out of the follicle as new hair grows. And it's normal for people to shed 50 to 100 hairs per day, which I think is crazy, but it kind of gives me comfort to know that, because I, as a girl, lose a lot of hair, and sometimes it can be scary. So about 90% of hair follicles are always in the growth phase. So, and then here's just some facts about hair. It grows faster when you're 15 to 30 years old. The growth is slowest in infants and the elderly. It grows faster in the summer than the winter. And if you're in the northern temperate zone, you shed most of your hair in November. Girls' hair grows faster than boys. And blondes have about 10% more hair follicles than brunettes, but reds have about 10% fewer hair follicles than reds.